So we all know this story about the prodigal son. There's a younger son who sees that his father has a lot of stuff and says, "Hey, Dad, I want my inheritance now, and I'm going to go out in the world, and I'm going to spend that, and I'm going to enjoy my life." So he goes out in the world, and he really squanders everything, and he ends up living in like a pig pen. And he thinks to himself, you know, my father's house, if I were a pig at my father's house, I'd be better off than I am right now. So he goes home, he goes back to his dad, and he says, I'm sorry. I was wrong, and I made a mistake. And his dad welcomes him with open arms. And we know that his brother's kind of mad right then, too, by the way, because his brother was there all along. But his father welcomed him home and celebrated him. And this is kind of the story of life. We see this story play out everywhere in movies, right? So the father in the story is like the divine. Let's just use the word the divine. So that is that presence and power that is always there. And the son is really in his ego, really chasing the world, right? He's not connected to his spirit. He forgot where he came from. And then his brother is like the judgmental side of ourselves, right? That has an opinion on everything. Don't we all have that? I know I do. So, but this story represents the journey of the soul through life, right? Like we forget where we came from, and we have to remember that's our spiritual journey, to return to this oneness. So we go off in the world, we forget who we are, we believe we're separate, and then our work is really to heal this sense of separation that we have so we can experience the oneness that we are part of. And so we're starting this 12-week study of A Course in Miracles. This was a request from someone in our community, and I'm like, the course, it's kind of difficult. How are we going to do this? So I found this book called The Heart of A Course in Miracles by Michael Mirdad. And what I want to say about it is it focuses on the 12 principles from A Course in Miracles, so it makes it a little more approachable. And every week we're going to work with one of those principles. And, the course is channeled material, so just to stay open to that, some people might feel uncomfortable with it, but the thing to know is that it points at universal truth. And in his book, Michael Mirdad talks about the principle. So like today our principle is oneness, but he also talks about the opposite of that. So the opposite of oneness is separation. And as we walk through this together, some of the language is pretty Christian, and I know that that's triggering for some people. So I just want to invite us to use some different words. So he uses the word God and Father a lot. And really what he's referring to is what we would call divine mind, or the big S self, spirit. And, different paths call it different things. Ernest Holmes called it divine consciousness. Some people call it universal consciousness, mind with a capital M, right? So just replace the words. If there's a word you don't like, change it to a word you like. He also uses he a lot, okay? And we try not to be so gender-ish in today's world. And Ernest Holmes would say, use the word it. We know what we're talking about, it, the presence and power. And he does use the word Christ, Holy Spirit. And when we think about that, it is like this Christ consciousness is what we would call it. It's being aware of your spiritual nature. So when we're looking at how to interpret this with science of mind, those of you who know the teaching symbols, those who don't, I'm about to interpret it. So, the teaching symbol is a V, right, in science of mind. So at the top is mind, spirit, God, and then there is the law, which is how things come into form, which comes through us, through our word, and then the experience of form. So I just wanted to relate it to, as we talk about this, how you can connect the two before we dive in. And he also has some interesting stuff about how it relates to our chakras. I'm not going to go there right now, but it is very interesting to think about. And the word miracle, why do they call it A Course in Miracles? A miracle is defined as a shift from ego consciousness to a consciousness of the divine. So we're moving away from fear to love, pain to healing, and trauma into freedom. So that's what a miracle is. And there's a lot of I am language too. So I want to talk about that too. If you're actually working with the course, which I know some people are, there's a lot of I am language. And you know, our ego can hear that like, I am so great, right? But I want you to think about the I am from a spiritual place. In the Bible, it says, I am that I am. I used to find that so confusing. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? What does that mean? Like Moses said it, I don't know what it means. But I think, you know, I am was another word for the divine, right? And so this idea, I am that I am, right? So I myself am that spirit. That's how I want you to hear the words. And James Twyman did a whole movie about it, if you want to go watch that. So bliss and oneness versus separation. You know, we decided as souls, we wondered what it would be like to be separate from spirit. And we began what Michael Meerdad calls our uncreation. So we began to make up an alternative reality of beliefs and build like our own little world of illusion, which is not the spiritual truth. And in the Bible, you know the version, Adam and Eve. Eve was evil. We ladies are still living with that. Evil temptresses put on the planet to tempt people, make them eat the apple. But what does that represent? It's a story. Did those people exist? I have no idea, right? Probably not. Probably it was just a story, right? So, but we chose to separate from this consciousness of the divine. They did that by eating the apple, right? And then they created some of the human expressions that we have from that. You know, you saw ego start to come in. I can do this myself. I don't need this divine source, right? But what does our ego do? It tries to hide. It tries to cover our tracks. It tries to protect us from fear-based feelings. That's what our ego does when it's acting up. And it tells us to avoid responsibility. Like, hey, this is not my fault. So like denial or projecting on someone else. And the way that we reverse these false beliefs is by forgiving ourselves and forgiving others. And Reverend Rod is going to speak about that next week, so I'm just going to touch on it a little bit. But when we choose forgiveness, we're healing our relationships, right? We're coming back into our connection with our spirit, with ourselves. And this idea of separation is talked about on many paths. Eckhart Tolle talks about it. He says it's the illusion of separation. It's created by the ego, which is the false sense of self we identify with. Our ego creates a me, and it creates an other. And it causes us to believe we're separate from everything else in the world. We feel isolated, we feel disconnected, we feel alone when we're in that place. And Wayne Dyer takes it a step further and talks about the 6 ingredients that our ego has. I am what I have, so my possessions define me. I am what I do, my achievements define me. I am what others think of me, my reputation defines me. I am separate from everyone, so my body, my physical experience of my body defines me as being alone. I'm separate from whatever I believe is missing in my life. So my life isn't reflecting my desires. Or I'm separate from God, divine source, whatever your word is. So I have to be good enough to have my life be blessed, right? And a lot of us grew up in that idea, like you better be good enough, you better not cross the line. So do any of those resonate with you guys? I know several of them, guilty, I'm still there. And I want you to think back through your life for a second about when did you first notice a sense of separation in your life? Like my sister got married when I was 3, my oldest sister. I was not happy about that. I said, I don't want to be a sister-in-law, I just want to be a sister. And so that was the first time I remember feeling separation, like, oh, this thing I love, this person I love, they're being taken away from me, right? And then I was this chubby kid. There's a picture of me in my junior Girl Scout uniform, the little green uniforms for anyone who was a Girl Scout. And I had these little skinny legs, and then I had this big stomach. My uniform was kind of tight on me. And then I had these chubby cheeks. But because I was chubby, I didn't get picked in school. You know how they would do the thing, you pick your team? I was always one of the last 2 or 3 people to get picked. I felt pretty separate, right? I felt separate because of that. And I can think about in high school, the groups of people who were like you were in or out with them. Being in environments where I wasn't like other people. Like I spent a lot of my career in the corporate world in banking, which is mostly men. So I wasn't like other people, right? You can feel othered by that, right? And whatever way we're different, we can really feel a sense of separation from that. And when you think about your own life, what has fed your sense of separation in your own life? And what feeds it now? Right? We all have times where we're like, I'm doing this by myself. Right? We all have times. But spiritually and scientifically, this idea of separation is not true. So scientifically, like the quantum field physics teaches us that everything is connected, right? That we are part of it. We work with this energy around us. There has to be a chooser for something to happen. We're all connected. And you feel energy around people. That's one of the interesting things about the Zoom environment, right? Like we're still doing a lot of stuff on Zoom for work, at least I am. And it's harder to feel people's energy when you're not in the same room that they're in, right? But when you're in the room, you can sense like something's off with this person. This energy feels off, right? That's because we're connected. But we live in this very intellectual, distracted world right now that people aren't tapped into that a lot of the time. And I know I'm guilty too. Rich is probably watching me going, yeah, ask Amy about her phone. So got to make fun of yourself. Got to laugh at yourself, everybody. But spiritually, oneness has been taught throughout time. In the Tao Te Ching, the way, which is what they call the Tao, is the ultimate oneness of all things and the source of all existence. And this is how the Tao speaks of oneness. The Tao that can be spoken of is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of 10,000 things. So think form, right? Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one can see the manifestation. So it's making a distinction between our connection to our higher self and our experience in form. These two spring from the same source, but they differ in name. So even if it's a manifestation in world, it's still the same source. And this is the idea that, you can't intellectualize spirit. Like you're not going to understand oneness by thinking about it. Our brain cannot get its head around that. Right? Oneness, are you kidding me? That's not what it feels like to be a human being, right? Michael Meerdad says the human brain is incapable of understanding what it means that the divine is. What the divine, God, whatever word you want to use, is simply beyond the scope of our human comprehension. The divine is best described as a feeling and a consciousness. And so think about the story of creation that we all learned when we were little, which is actually in many paths, not just the Christian path. It's in many paths, but this higher power said, "Let there be light." And in that moment, this spirit of manifesting the word that we call it was God and was with God at the same time. So it was not separate, right? And we, though, thought that we're separate from it, right? Like, I don't know about anyone else, but growing up, and I did go to church every Sunday. We were a really good Methodist little family, but no one ever told me that it was in me. I think that's how I ended up on an alternative path. I thought, seems like everybody's begging for something to happen here when they pray, and I just didn't feel the energy of it. I didn't feel the connection of it. But that's our human experience. Gordon read to us from Michael Beckwith. Oneness is the interconnectedness of all life. The divine presence animates all things. And as we recognize our oneness, we overcome our egos and our identities. And we do that through our spiritual practice. And we also do that by how we choose to act in the world. We do it with both. And our intention for these 12 weeks is to create a new consciousness, within ourselves, to move away from this belief that we're separate and to move toward knowing our unity with all things. Joel Goldsmith gives a way to visualize this. So if you look at a tree, imagine a tree, and a seed falls off the tree and it drops to the ground. And the seed still contains the life of the tree. And then it gets planted in the ground and it starts to sprout and develop roots. But it still has the same life of that tree that it came from. Because it's only one life, and the same is true of each of you. You came from this power and presence, this creative energy, call it science, call it whatever you want, and you manifested here in form, but you still partake of the nature of what you came from. It's the truth of who you are. You're not separate from it. Mark Nepo, in his book, More Together Than Alone, said, when the first human beings came, the more fearful, take a breath. The most fearful said, "You are different, go away." And the other said, "You're different, come teach me what I don't know." And the go away tribe believes that human beings by nature are self-serving and they're untrustworthy and we need to control them. And when we live in that tribe, we need laws, we need rules, we need constraints, because we have to do that to keep people in line. But the Come Teach Me tribe believes that human beings are kind and trustworthy by nature. And when we're living in the Come Teach Me tribe, we have laws that empower freedom so that people can be who they are and offer their gifts. Doesn't that sound a little bit like what's playing in the world right now? And we can live in both tribes sometimes. Let's be honest. Like, we can be in the go away tribe about people who have beliefs we don't have or who make choices we don't have. We can be in the go away. I don't have time for you, right? But our work is to be teachable. Our work is to be curious, to stay open about people who are different than we are. What can we learn from them? There's an incredible amount we can learn because we are connected. So how do we increase our awareness of oneness? First we have to realize when we're in separation. I think a very easy way to realize you're in separation is when you don't feel good, right? Like you just got that ugh thing going, right? Another clue is when you feel like I'm a me or there's another. You're in separation. If you feel isolated, if you feel disconnected, if you feel alone, you're in separation. But when we embrace oneness, we cultivate our inner connection. And one of the best ways to do that is meditation and prayer. And many teachings talk about it, but it's our way of coming back into alignment. And I would argue that being in practice with like-minded people magnifies the field, of spiritual energy. If you've ever meditated with a group of people and had that happen, and sometimes being in a spiritual place will do that for you. I went to Machu Picchu a long time ago, and as soon as I stepped off, we stepped onto the land there, I had this incredible feeling of peace. Just to feel like just such a sense of well-being, like everything else stopped. And we often experience this in a sacred place, right? Because we've slowed down, we're in the present moment. So you can feel it if you cultivate that present moment awareness, if you can just let go of worrying about the future and stop thinking about the past, but just simply be present. That's what we do when we sit in our meditation. The Buddhists also suggest that you practice non-attachment, not being attached to things in the world, not being attached to outcomes. That's a lot of work, right? You got to talk to yourself on that one. And gratitude is also a great practice for oneness. Focusing on what we have instead of what we lack. Focusing on what is present, not what is absent. And that brings us into an awareness that we live in an abundant universe. Have you ever just walked through the day and thought, wow, I'm really grateful for this or that, and then all of a sudden you notice you have more things to be grateful for, like, oh, I never noticed that before. Wow, that's really cool. But you're being present. And so how do we start to practice this? In the morning, setting an intention for the day. The Course uses some language like this. You can modify this for yourself into whatever works for you, but just this idea, I make no decisions alone today. I deny the effects of all previous decisions that I have made outside of my divine self. So I'm not carrying it forward from here, right? I'm letting it go. I choose the divine as my guide today, and I choose to make all decisions with my divine, including the decision of who I am. I'm not someone else's idea of me, I'm my divine's idea of me. And I accept all the wonderful gifts that come to me today. And you can add on a visualization to that before you go out from your meditation and prayer practice. You can add just like seeing what would your perfect day look like? What does it look like if you're moving in this energy today? How is it different? And then throughout the day, if you notice you're drifting, just realign. It can be just a little, and I just remind myself that my divine goes before me to make my way today. I know that all is well. Just give yourself a little, mini prayer. And end your day with it too. I rest in the divine. I go to sleep now. I know that I am rejuvenated through this sleep. And you can also just spend a little time in gratitude at the end of the day. I'd like to spend some time and just think about what happened today that was good? What was I grateful for today? Whenever I do it, I really realize, wow, there was a lot more than I realized. My keynote decided to do its own thing for a second. So feed your oneness, not your separation. If we believe in our oneness, we're able to imagine and manifest various forms of that oneness. But if we believe we're separate, that's what we're going to manifest. And take it a step further. If we believe that all is one, we know that we are originating our experience within ourselves from that spiritual part of us. But if we believe that we're separate, then we think it's happening to us, right? We're a victim of what is happening. And we can't experience oneness when we're carrying judgment and lack of forgiveness. So that's part of our work too. You know, I don't know if this happens for anyone else, but when I sit down to meditate, whatever I'm holding, whatever resentment I have, whatever is bugging me, it comes up. And just ask your spirit to help you. Like, I got no idea what to do here. Please help me. Right? Like, I just release it and I fill it with light. Because we all have grudges if we're honest about it, right? We have grudges. We have people who bug us, guilty, right? And we got to let it go because it gets in our way of what's possible for us. We have to accept responsibility for where we are. You know, what do I need to see differently in my life to move forward? How do I need to center myself back within myself? And for now, the invitation is just to realize where you are feeling a sense of separation in your life and to do some work on that. We're going to go into a practice in a minute, but I want to close with a story, and it's from one of my favorite movies, Pay It Forward. Kevin Spacey made it before he had his fall from grace. I still love the story, and it's a book, so maybe I should just say, there's this book, Pay It Forward. Not have to do the Kevin Spacey thing, but if you decide to go watch it, it's very touching. But there's this young boy, his name is Trevor, and his mom is an alcoholic, and she's trying really hard to get sober for him, but she's really struggling. And his dad is a drug addict, and his dad, you know, kind of comes in and out, and when he shows up, it's mostly to steal money from the mom. I mean, he's bad news. And Trevor has a teacher named Eugene Simonet, and Eugene was badly burned by his father when he was a little boy. So he's super pissed off at the world. Like, you can just see it in his energy, like he's mad, he's defensive. But he gives the kids an assignment to come up with a way to change the world. And Trevor comes up with this idea of paying it forward. And his idea is, I'm going to help 3 people with something they can't do for themselves. And it's got to be something that's really hard. But then they have to agree to help 3 more people. And in watching his purity of heart and his kindness and seeing people around him start to change and to pay it forward, like the hearts of all the people around him are opening up. And I would argue, you know, he was in his oneness. He was in his divine nature. He believed in the good in people. And that's what happens when we embrace oneness. And we can do that for others. So that's how we practice oneness in our life. Not just in our spiritual practice, but also calling it forward in what we choose to do. So I'm going to invite everyone to get comfortable, and we're going to do a little practice together to close before we go into prayer. And so I just want to invite everyone to turn within. And just get comfortable and put your hands on your legs with your palms up, just to sit in a place of openness. And I want you to invite the light into yourself. So imagine over your head, over your crown chakra, just bringing light into your body, this connection that you have with the divine. And see that light move into your third eye, into your throat chakra, into your heart chakra where your spirit lives, and all the way through your body. Just imagine your body being infused by light. Just take a moment and appreciate this connection. And I want you to visualize a place in your life or someone in your life, just something in your life that feels like it could use some healing prayer. And if someone else is included in that prayer, just imagine them sitting there with you. I just invite you to send love and light first to yourself. Just appreciate yourself in this moment. All that you are, just because the divine created you. And share that light and love with whoever else you're holding in mind. Just seeing them surrounded in this light as well, and this love as well. And just ask your divine to help you let go of any idea you have about the struggle that is happening here, whether it's personal for you or it's a situation or person in your life. Just ask your divine to open up this situation and release the struggle. And I just invite you to call in the qualities, the divine qualities that you want to call in this situation. Love, peace, oneness, well-being, healing, wholeness. Whatever the divine quality is that you want to call in, I just invite you to speak that in your mind's eye now. You have all you need. You are all you need already. And that is also true for your loved ones. And just see the situation transforming. Just see more light coming into it and see it shifting. Just know that it is shifting now. And give thanks that this has happened. And feel gratitude for this change. Give thanks for being reunited with the oneness that you came from. And this is what we do when we pray. We recognize the divine that we are from, that we are part of. We unify with it. We know our oneness with it. We speak our word of realization for what we are calling in. We give thanks and gratitude for the shift that the prayer has made. And we release it knowing it's fulfilled. So in this moment, I know the presence and power of Spirit is here, surrounding and supporting all of us with love, with grace, with goodness, with peace, with ease, with perfect divine well-being. And I know that I am one with all these qualities of Spirit, just as everyone hearing my words and really all of the world is one with all these qualities of Spirit. love, peace, grace, well-being, aliveness, wholeness, health, healing. And from this place of oneness, I just speak a word of transformation. I know that whatever has been brought forth in the minds of people this morning, what they have brought into their heart and surrounded in light and love, I know and declare a shift on the behalf of each and every person. I know that this shift is done now, and I say yes to this. I know that each person here is a perfect receiver of their good. And I bless us as we go out in the world to share our oneness with others, knowing it is done. I'm so grateful for the fulfillment of this prayer. And with so much gratitude, I simply say, and so it is. Amen.